Hi, and welcome to Viva Energy series, The Shift. My name is Kristine Slater, and I'm going to talk to you today about plastic, its life cycle, and what Viva Energy are planning on doing to help solve this problem. So I'm going to start with a belief of mine. Plastic is not the problem, our inability to recycle it is. Now that's a pretty bold statement right there, and like many things in life, nothing is as simple as two sentences. But when it comes to plastic, I've been involved with it for more than 17 years, and when you graduated in 1999, that's most of my career. So I'm going to talk to you about plastic, the good and the bad, how you can chemically recycle it, and what Viva Energy are doing to help the issue. Obviously there's mechanical recycling as well, but today we'll be focusing on chemical recycling. The reality is there's enough plastic left over in the world for all of us. I get the negative press about plastic, and if the truth be known, I'm one of those people that if I forget my reusable bags when I go to the supermarket, I'll do everything I can, put food in pockets, carry it in my arms to try and prevent the purchase of another plastic bag. As the waste triangle says, avoidance is the best solution. To understand the incredible advantages that plastic brings, the logical uses for it, such as in food packaging and medical equipment. Think about this. Plastic increases the life cycle for so many products. The cereal in your cornflakes box, the shapes in your barbecue shaped box, the frozen veg in the freezers, let alone the meat. Without plastic, these products would last significantly less time, not just in our homes, but through the whole supply chain. When you consider that globally we already throw out about a third of our food, this would only add to the problem. In Victoria, that equates to 2.4 million tonnes of food and about $6 million worth of food per year that never ends up on our tables. And that's a massive problem. More food waste equals more food to feed everybody, equals more land required to grow the food, equals more water and more energy in its production and transport. Primarily, we need to get better at not wasting food, but in a country where water is a scarcity, we need to ensure that food lasts as long as possible. Do we want to grow more food and use more resources, or do we want to use materials which make our food last longer? For me, that's one of the key questions we should be asking ourselves. Let's look at the humble continental cucumber, for example. So why on earth do we need to wrap a cucumber, which already has its own skin, in plastic? Well, the continental cucumber is very tasty, but it also has a very thin skin. Because of the thin skin, it's far more likely to be damaged and lose moisture while travelling through the supply chain. From the study that was done in 2012, the continental cucumber lasted significantly longer when shrink wrapped and kept it up to the standards that consumers expect. When you consider the distances our food travels, let alone the way it might be treated along the way, an extra layer of protection is important to make it last longer and be far less likely to be damaged and then thrown away. Now about those groceries we carry home. When I was a kid, we had the tucker bag, and we used to bring home all our groceries in paper bags, and there was this funny talking bag on the TV. Then sometime during primary school, there was a huge campaign to save the trees, which resulted in the ousting of the paper bags and the introduction of plastic bags. Now we find ourselves banning plastic bags, and we've gone full circle back to paper bags, just this time 100% recycled. But is that the right decision or a popular decision? Based on life cycle analysis that has been completed and research I've done, that is a complicated question. I think the National Geographic summed up the bag conundrum well. Because reusable and paper bags have a huge environmental cost up front, and plastic bags have a far greater negative effect after being used, it's hard to determine which type of bag is the most sustainable. It's clear from the information that if you consider the upfront impact, paper bags and reusable bags have significantly more water and energy and have a far greater CO2 impact. But with the plastic bag breaking down into microplastics and potentially ending up in the oceans, they have a far greater downstream impact. So the challenge is, how do we reduce the significant negative impact of plastic bags after being used? The short answer is to reuse them as many times as possible and then recycle them. We all know plastic comes from fossil fuel, but how many people are aware that plastics plants were built as a rubbish bin for olefins, which are the precursor to plastic? Take propylene as an example. It's a byproduct of the production of petrol, and there are limited places you can put it. The plastic plants were built as a way to turn the excess propylene into a usable product. And since we started using plastic on a commercial scale in the 1970s, it's only grown since then and will continue to grow. So what is plastic, and what does chemical recycling mean? The top line on the chart is the polymerization process to turn olefins into polyolefins. In this example, propylene. You can see that it turns a single propylene molecule into a product thousands of molecules long and creates plastic as we know it. To recycle plastic, we need to break those chains down again. In an ideal world, we'd just like to be able to turn the plastic back into a monomer. This is possible for polymerization that occurs through condensation, PET for example, where to make the chains, water is removed. There are some really cool bacteria that can put moisture back in, a bit like our gut processes starch, and break the chains back down into their initial monomers. Pyrolysis is the process of decomposing material with heat, sometimes in the presence of a catalyst and often with the absence of oxygen. In the case of plastic, initially the plastic is collected, then it's cleaned and sorted to remove contaminants such as PVC. From here it's shredded into small pieces to improve the efficiency of the process before entering the reactor where thermal decomposition occurs. This process creates three main products: a char, which is like an ash that can be used in products such as bitumen; the off gas or light gas, which is used to provide the heat required for the reactor to make the process as carbon neutral as possible; and the pyrolysis oil, which, after further processing, can be used to produce plastics. For those of you who don't know much about Viva Energy, we're the owners and operators of the legacy Shell downstream business in Australia, including the strategically located Geelong refinery. Our longer term goal for the refinery is to look at ways we can repurpose the facility so it can continue to play a useful role in the energy transition while still providing energy security for the fuels and products we use today. One of the areas we have identified where Geelong refinery could play a role is in co-processing, which would take the oil from pyrolysis and turn it back into plastic. To enable this process, at the Geelong refinery we have an FCC, or a fluidised catalytic converter, which is commonly known as the rubbish bin of the refinery. That is, it can take almost anything and crack it into smaller chains. The main advantage of an FCC, as opposed to other types of crackers, is its ability to deal with contaminants such as organic chloride and sulphur. Olefins into plastic, plastic into products, products used, waste disposed of properly, bins collected, plastic sorted, plastic pyrolyzed into pie oil into the refinery and into the cracker. Cracker produces olefins. Olefins go around into plastic, and around we go. The classic circular economy. So simple, right? Just bring the plastic crude, pie oil, tack oil, whatever you'd like to call it, chuck it in the cracker and turn it back into propylene. If only it was that simple. To test the theory, in 2021 we did a trial with a large number of companies to prove that the circular economy can be a reality. Enter Project KitKat. Here's how it worked. CurbCycle collected the plastic through the Red Cycle program, then it was sorted by IQ Renew, pyrolyzed by Licella in New South Wales, and then injected into the cracker at Geelong to make propylene, which was then sent to the polymer plant to be turned into polypropylene. This was then turned into film at Tagleaf, printed on at Amcor, and then KitKats were packaged in the recycled wrappers. This was a fantastic achievement and collaboration to do a proof of concept. However, the amount injected was very small, and we're now looking at processing much larger quantities of recycled plastic. Then the next question is, when you put it in the cracker, what does it turn into? So you can see from the diagram that there are many different products that it's turned into, and the graphic shows that 5 to 10% turns into propylene and then into plastic. This might not sound like a lot, but we also need to consider this side. For every 100 tonnes of recycled plastic we put into the cracker, that's 100 tonnes of fossil fuel that isn't used. This process will reduce the plastic to landfill and also our country's reliance on fossil fuel. Although we're in the early stages, from what we've learnt so far, we believe this has the potential to recycle a significant amount of both soft and rigid plastics from the waste plastic streams. The refinery is a complex place. However, our complexity also brings many people with the ability to find solutions to complex problems like the circular economy. It also means that we have the equipment required to deal with the many different problems, and I'm sure with the people power we have in the refinery, the engineers, chemists, operators, maintenance people and lab techs, for example, will be able to help solve this problem. As I mentioned earlier, every application has a downside, from plastics to paper bags. What we need to do is ensure that we choose the best solution for the application, considering the entire life cycle of the product and not just what is popular right now. Choosing the lowest environmental impact solution, using only what we really need, and then recycling it again at the end of its life is the direction I think we all need to be heading. Plastic has a very low environmental impact through production and use. Where it falls down is in the disposal phase. By recycling, we will enable a circular economy solution for plastics, reducing their overall environmental impact. The question is, are we too late to change public perception on plastic? The paper bag story would say no. Thanks very much.